This is a podcast from the Queen City Podcast Network.
Hope. Sometimes we need help finding it. And sometimes that help comes in the form of stories of people who've lost it and found it yet again. That's why we're here. Welcome to Hope with Ramona Holloway. This is part 2 of a 4-part series on being a dementia caregiver. How we get to that point of acceptance and how we get to those later stages and beyond. Because I have learned I cannot do this alone, none of it. I decided to collaborate with a nonprofit practice in Charlotte that helps people navigating the space of cognitive decline, and they do it so well. Their founder is Dr. Chuck Edwards. He is our guest. He is the founder of Memory and Movement Charlotte. And for people with cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, or another form of dementia, Parkinson's, this practice is helping families, empowering them, educating them, and in this case, uplifting them.
Thank you.
Chuck, the work you're doing to help caregivers and people who are also patients, because our focus here is caregivers. And I love the fact that your practice embraces caregivers. Why is it, though, that we are just so slow in getting to the point that we realize we're caring for someone with dementia? Why does it take so long?
Well, when I was, I spent some time at Johns Hopkins learning how to sort of take care of the patients, and people would come from all over the world to come to Hopkins, and they did a great job with the science, and they always would tell us that you have to make a diagnosis, and then we would make a diagnosis, and then what would happen? These families would be just absolutely crushed. They're going back to South America or going, back to everywhere in the United States. And it dawned on me that there was a gap. And I knew early on that I wasn't going to be able to help these patients unless I helped the caregiver get better at taking care of them. And that was a real epiphany. I'm
so glad you had that epiphany. Your epiphany has helped a lot of people.
It has. And there's a lady in Asheville named Peggy Knoll, who has a clinic very similar to ours. And she guided me a lot when I was at Hopkins. And she also has the same philosophy we do.
Mm-hmm. So do you have the answer as to why it takes caregivers so long to get to that point of, okay,
I need some help.
I need some help.
Well, just recognizing, we talked a little bit in session 1, part 1, about why we're slow kind of coming around to realizing that someone is in trouble. One of the things that happens, and this is really kind of important, is that every person that has any form of memory loss has a basic fear. And that fear is, if anyone knows how bad I am, I'm going to be alone, I'm going to be abandoned, and I'm going to be in a place I can't get out of. So then when you go near it, like you did with your mother, what did you get? You got resistance, anger. You're not going to come and tell me or control me, is what they tell you. And so that resistance means that we're a little late getting there. Social skills sometimes are preserved, but the social stigma, and I like to use the word almost plague-like. People were so afraid of the plague. It's almost equivalent to how terrified people are about, 1, themselves having it, and 2, as a daughter, having to make the realization that my mother actually has Alzheimer's, and I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to be telling people. I'm as afraid of the social stigma as she is. in just coming at it in a different way.
Keeping her secret was easier on the outside because there were so many people who didn't seem to notice. Like I remember even bringing it up to my aunt one time. Her youngest sister had worked in nursing homes her entire nursing career. So I knew she had expertise. And I said, well, does it sound like your sister is, experiencing some dementia? She said, no. Why did it? So
well,
it seemed like other people weren't picking up on what I was picking up on.
Well, you can fool you. We talked a little bit about the 5 minutes. Also, living away where your primary contact is on the phone, they can fool you on the phone. My brother is a naval officer. He was an admiral in the Navy, and he's all over the world. And, we always had to call my parents on Sunday night. And I had been talking to him about, kind of a deficiencies in mom and dad. He calls me right after he talked. He said, I just had the best conversation with Dad. And I don't get this business of you saying that they're impaired. And, he says he watches the Cubs in the afternoon. And then, he's playing golf. I said, Mark, Dad hadn't played golf in a year. And if we didn't set him in front of the TV, he wouldn't be able to turn it on to watch the Cubs play. So he said, well, I'm coming. I'm going to visit. And he said, I'll probably stay with you and Mary. And I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you stay with Mom and Dad? He was over there for about 20 minutes and he calls and says, do you know how messed up this thing is? I said, hallelujah, welcome aboard. So, again, people don't want to make that jump.
No. Before I made the jump, I struggled because, like we said before, not only was this my mother, she was a single mom. We were a dynamic duo. I'm an only child, not married, no children. It was just us. And this was a person who I couldn't trust anymore. So I still wanted to trust her.
And you still did on occasion.
So let me tell you how and when that trust went horribly wrong. So I'm still in the denial phase. I know there's something wrong, but I'm still holding on to, you call it wishing and hoping.
Right. You got those fingers crossed.
Wishing and hoping. Yeah. So I had a little knot right underneath my breast. And my mom said, I've got something for that. Now, my mother had been very successful over the years in using some natural remedies to help people. She had been unsuccessful at times as well. But, this thing, some salve that she had under.
Deal. Yeah, it was her deal.
Yeah. And I said, now, Mom, is this going to make it run? Or what does it do? She said, nope. It'll just go down. So, okay, so I used some of her salve the way she instructed me, and I went to work, and it turns out it's a drawing salve, which meant that it was drawing all of the infection up and exploding. So now I get to work, and I am a woman on a radio show with 3 men, and there is this bloody, kind of yellowy substance that's coming out of my shirt. So I call Mom and I said, Mom, what's going on here? This thing busted open. And she goes, oh, yeah. That's supposed to happen. Just put a sanitary napkin on it. What? I'm sitting in front of a window at a radio station with 3 men, and you're telling me that for the next 4 hours, I'm supposed to sit there with my shirt up, holding a sanitary napkin to my breast? Ma'am. But I still, I was still setting myself up. Mm-hmm. You told me that this wasn't going to happen when now you're telling me that's exactly what was going to happen. Yeah. I couldn't trust her anymore. And when I finally realized I couldn't trust her because of the disease, I could stop setting myself up. Mm-hmm. that allowed me to see the signs differently. I couldn't, but I couldn't, I'm not going to say I got from here to here by myself, because I did therapy. I worked with a spiritual mentor. I did all the things. I went to the doctor. I got help with my anxiety. But once I got to that point, I could stop setting myself up for adding to my anxiety, adding to my depression, adding to my illness, because I'm trusting a woman who doesn't remember some really basic things.
What we say kindly is that she wasn't on her A game anymore. That's what we say in the clinic.
Like there's a letter of the alphabet for dementia that hasn't been invented yet. It's Z plus.
You've just described almost perfectly the transition from stage 2 to stage 3. Stage 2 is where we're on the roller coaster and we've got our fingers crossed. We're wishing and hoping that I'm not going to have to deal with this. And then stage 3 is I've been slapped around enough that I know I'm in it now. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I have a percentage. And I always ask the caregivers to know kind of where they are. What percentage of the time when you are dealing with your mother are you thinking about the disease and have to triangulate that's me and the disease talking to mom, or mom and the disease talking to me? What percentage of the time? And when you are in stage 2, which is wishing and hoping, you would say, well, 90% of the time we're fine, all right? When you're in stage 3, there's no 60 and 50. It's like I'm 90% a caregiver. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it just shows you've waited a while, but the percentage is, Dr. Edwards, that 90% of the time when I'm dealing with my dad or my mom or my husband, I have to take into account the disease, how I say something, how I come at it, or whether or not I take, when they tell me something, whether or not I believe them, I'm always having to take it into account.
And I have to divorce myself from expectations other than it's going to be okay eventually. Like we're whatever this is, right? In this moment, it's going to be okay. We'll get through it, and then there'll be a time of breathing.
When you expect it to be, when you know what to expect, it allows you to get all of that false emotion out of it and saying, look, and this is what happens as we progress. Right now, this is my mother, and I love her, and actually, I'm in charge of her now. I have to make sure that she's calm, safe, clean, and loved. And once you get into that mode, it makes it easier, okay? It makes it easier. Now, the takeaway from stage 2, of course, is fear, anxiety. I don't know where this is going, and here we go. Stage 3 is exhaustion. And the thing is that sleep, you are as exhausted when you wake up in the morning as when you went to sleep. And so all of that, that able to be calm and be able to replenish, you get up and you go, okay, where's the checklist? Let me get started. I got to get them fed. I got to get her clean. And then I got to go and live a life.
Right.
And I can hardly wait till the companion comes that can relieve me at least a little bit.
Right. And, for me, I had to kind of get my ego in check a little bit, because there were some things that I thought I should be able to do for my mom. I should be able to work at home while she's home. Well, it was very difficult in those later stages.
She would not let you alone.
No. I mean, the shadowing. I mean, and then every headline that I'm researching for work, she's reading out loud and she wants to know the whole story. And I'm trying to research, going from website to website. And if I don't include her, then she's off doing who knows what.
So you have to go follow her. Yeah.
Right. So, but that wasn't early on.
Right.
So when you say know what to expect, for me, it became letting go of expectations and just going with whatever. And the biggest thing that helped me make that turn was a woman I have a couple of women I call my fairy god mentors.
Soulmate.
She's a fairy god mentor. And she said, after mom forgot my name, after mom forgot that I was her daughter, I'll say, that day, she said to me, because I called in tears. I was a total puddle, and my mom, I think I shared with you, had big attitude. She wasn't, a
shrinking violet.
Shrinking violet. She was big attitude. She billed herself as America's favorite cougar, self-billed. So when I told her that she was my mom, she did one of these numbers like this one. Because she assumed that there had to be something wrong with me to assume that this young, rich, hot woman could have an old woman like that as a daughter or a kid at all. I was destroyed.
Well, it's very common because what happens, think about this, is when short-term memories go, the long-term memories often are preserved. She could talk about the old days and with her father and,
she could tell my childbirth story until she couldn't.
So what happens is that when she sees you, she would think of, I have a daughter, but that daughter is she was thinking of herself before she had a daughter.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And she was going back to the days that she was this pretty lady and guys were really
I don't know
attracted to
at
her.
what point she was an internationally famous diva, but apparently in her mind.
Right. And so she sees you and she says, that can't be my daughter because my daughter is either 1 year old or I'm not married. Because that's what the old memories are. And so it is crushing, although she probably always knew that you were a special person in her life. So that's important. But then that gives you a hook when she gets anxious and you're trying to connect with her on something. You go immediately to, Mom, I was thinking about that trip that we took when I was 7 years old or something. And all of a sudden she'll just calm down. You go back and you have to go where she is in order to make the situation work.
And I will say this with tears in my eyes because it was the absolute best advice I got from that fairy god mentor, which is every single day you wake up and you say, thank you, God, for everything she remembers that day. And then as I grew spiritually and as I grew into the adult who was confident in the decisions that she was making because I was just trying to do what you told me to do. Calm, clean, comfortable, and loved. So then I could also be grateful that I could still remember for her.
We ought to get this God fairy mentor. What do we call her?
My fairy god mentor.
Okay. Because we have this saying as things are progressing that let's don't focus on what we can't do anymore. Let's focus on what we can do. As far as with you trying to do anything in your house and your mother shadowing you like she was and being a constant distraction, we like one of the salvations is to have safe havens in your own apartment. Now, when you're living as intimate as you were with your mother, I don't know how you would have this.
Yeah.
But having safe havens, also having the ability to have several days off, have someone come in. You were an only child.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get a nephew being an only child?
My family is built on the love of people who we choose as family.
There you go. I like that.
And so my nephew is adopted, and since day 5 of his life on this planet, I have been his auntie,
super aunt. Okay.
his auntie.
So
What's up, Jeremy Hayes?
So having, first of all, as a caregiver where you were, most of the time, when we're listening to our families and caregivers, a soulmate that you can share everything with. Like, you get on and you don't have to have sort of this pump. Oh, how, people would say, Ramona, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. It gets tough. I'm doing okay. This is the person that you say, you won't believe what the hell I'm doing right now. Okay. Or you won't believe what happened today. I don't know if I can go the distance on this, and you get to pour it out. Okay. And you had that.
I had that.
Yeah,
and I highly recommend it, because also I gave myself the freedom to say the things that if I'd put it on social media, I would have been destroyed. Those moments when I was tired.
Yeah, sure.
And one time I made the mistake of putting something on social media about how tired and frustrated I was. And there was comment after comment after comment saying, you should love her now because you'll be sad when she's gone. And I'm like, and I just felt so guilty.
Suck it up. Toughen up, girl. Yeah.
So, you're ungrateful, all the things she did for you. So it was like, ooh, I had to learn safe spaces to share. But I also learned I had to share that, and found that those feelings that I thought were me being selfish, some of those were just self-preservation.
You have to be. One of the things I say all the time is I want my caregivers to be selfish. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously they are giving a lot, but there are times when you need to say, this is what I need. I need 5 days off. I'm going to call someone to come in, or sometimes we can help arrange for some. But, or this is what I need. I had one doctor who was a female physician. She was amazing, and she had this phenomenal sense of humor. And I asked her how she was doing. I said, I always ask, what's going on at your house when things are working? When the patient seems to be calm, they seem to be entertained. What's going on? And what are you doing? And she said, that's easy. It's when we're watching basketball and drinking beer.
Thank you, Buckeyes football.
Okay, so
we watched the same game many times.
There you go.
House.
Well, that's what she did. She said, what I did was I filmed 5 Carolina basketball games where Carolina always won.
Yep.
And he would sit there, and I would come out when doing what I wanted to do. I'd say, how's it going? He said, oh, man, the Tar Heels are winning. This is great. and then she would say, the beer is for me. Okay, so she'd be in there drinking beer while he was watching. So you have just come up with lots of our sort of techniques. And you know what? Sometimes you just have to laugh at what you do.
You get to those moments where you can watch her like on her feet in front of the TV, so excited to see whether or not Ohio State beats Michigan. Yeah. And it's a nail biter. Yeah. And it's a game from 1997. So you get to experience the joy once you get to that
Ramona,
place.
You'd have trouble finding a time when Ohio State beat Michigan. I mean, really?
Ooh,
seriously.
Chuck, I might have to get you some security after this
come on,
because I have some family members.
Always, oh my God. Ooh. They never beat Michigan. You'd have to create it. Oh God.
But can we talk about the 5 biggest challenges when you get to that point of, okay, I'm in this now. What are, let's say, 4 or 5 big challenges that most caregivers face at that stage?
It depends on the stage, but when we get in to stage 3, and we are,
I'll say that stage of caregiving.
Okay, right, stage of caregiving, not for the patient. Mm-hmm. They're completely different stages than the caregiving. Mm-hmm. I've never read stages of caregiving. It's something that we've sort of come up with, but one is that. How to deal with the exhaustion. And also when you understand what the effects, the emotional effects on you are in this. You're in the trenches, and understand. And we're going to talk a little bit in another session about the switch, and I'm going to tell you what happens. But dealing with the exhaustion, trying to be a little bit selfish, and because being selfish allows you to continue to care for the patient at the level that they need. Okay, we have to be we have to be reasonable in our expectations. We have to be able to accept help. Sometimes when you're going through this, and the other thing is to take charge. Okay. So take charge means that every one of us has a different set of resources. All right. Some people have family members that can come in and do things. Others have money where they can hire people to come in. But but take charge means that, let's say that your mother had a really close friend, and she says, Ramona, you tell me what I can do. I love your mother. And instead of saying, well, I'll get back to you, you go, Tuesday, Thursday, lunch, I'll make the reservation. You come by and get her in the car. You tell them how they can help you. And a lot of our caregivers, that's where they fail. They say, well, I think there are people that want to help, but they don't affect it. They don't follow up on it. And I say, your job is, because if you could have 3 hours on Thursday and Saturday to sort of just get in the bathtub, it doesn't matter. But you've got to take charge. Yeah. And also on the safety issues too. You know,
connecting with other people who had been through it was so valuable to me, because there were just little tips that, someone else might have come up with, but they were just, I guess I was too exhausted to even think of it. But, someone said, don't have your caregiver leave the minute that you come home. I mean, I would say, I'd have someone scheduled from noon to 8, and, I'd get home at 8 and they'd leave. They said, no.
I love that tip.
Make sure, don't just have them scheduled. Give yourself some time. Give yourself a half an hour so that you can get some time to breathe, to transition from your work day.
Even take a shower and get,
Because, people would say, oh, girl, what you need to do is climb in the bathtub. What you need to do is go get your nails done. I needed a nap. And just a minute of peace.
You mentioned at the beginning of our first one, you were talking about that your mother, writing a letter of recommendations.
She wrote a letter of recommendation for a caregiver.
Yeah, she didn't want to accept. She didn't want to accept that she needed the help. And so a lot of people, I say, you're in the companion phase. We need to have a companion come in and say, my mother would never allow this. Although they were at a stage where first of all, they needed it. And if we were smart enough, we could accept it.
And see, that's my mom.
So we came up.
The question that I asked her, do I need to have someone sit with you all day? I did. But it was so much easier for me when I told her that this is my assistant.
Well, we call it imprinting. And the imprinting means, I think animals do this. So if we had in fact, we're working on one right now. So what we would do is to have the companion that you've chose, someone that you have a confidence in. And the first time that you introduce her to your mother, the two of you are in the house together, or the three of you go out to lunch together. And so every time, the first, several times that you're together is always with you. And then the patient will associate this person as a friend of Ramona's. So therefore, the patient is a friend of the person, is a friend of mine. And then one day, this is a girl, would come by and say, I'm looking for Ramona, but she's not home. Why don't you and I, I'm just here. Why don't we just go for a walk or something? And so you gradually bring them in. But, if you do the first day, what some people do is say, okay, here's your companion, and they're in the car and they drive away, it ain't going to work.
Right.
They have to realize that they're part of the deal now. And once they know that they're attached to you, much more likely that they'll accept it. It's just kind of a technique.
In our case, the technique worked because, Mom would also decide that she was going to tell the caregivers not to do things. Like, don't take out the trash. Don't cook. Don't fold.
Don't do anything. Yeah.
And you and I have talked off camera about race. When we had African-American caregivers come to the house, my mom did not want them to lift a finger. My mom had done some domestic work. She'd been a hotel maid. She'd worked in the kitchen at United Methodist Retreat in Ohio. And she was seeing this sister and she was not going to have her lift a finger. So therefore, I would hire someone who my mom would be like, don't. And I wouldn't have all the help I needed.
She wasn't comfortable with that. Yeah.
She was not comfortable with that. However, when we had white people come, she was more than willing to ask them to go to any length to help her.
Well, that's
But what I wound up having to do was then tell her, these people are working for me. And if they don't do what I tell them to do, then I'm going to have to fire them. And said, that's not fair. I said, but I was at the point where I was a grown-up and I could stand on those words and say, if these people who you're bossing around don't want to listen to me, then I'm going to let them go. I had to allow her to be angry with me, which was something that little Ramona was very, very uncomfortable. I didn't want her mad at me. Oh my gosh. Yes. I had to be comfortable with making decisions that she didn't like and understand that sometimes.
You are really good at strategic threats. I'm going to put you, I can hear you right now.
But it truly wasn't a threat because it truly was not a threat. That was the reality. Because if the people I'm bringing in are listening to you and not being helpful in my space, then I have to let you go. And I let her know that that's what was going on, that she was going to be depriving these people the opportunity to work. I had to.
I mean, it was just, if that works, whatever works. Okay,
and that's the thing I found is that when I could try to understand her and what was important to her, then we were better off.
One of the things that is important here is to know what works with your particular person that you're in charge of. Knowing where the safety issues are, she says, well, I'm going to cook something. I'm going to, and I'm going to do this. And, so the more that you realize that there are attributes that come, traits that come from that person that, was in charge, and they're going to, you got to know what you're dealing with. But that's I think you did a pretty good job on that part of it. To get that person
to hear
in.
You say that is amazing.
Yeah.
Because in part 3 of our series, I want to talk about those signs that a caregiver needs to do something different to take care of him or herself. Like there comes a time for many people, especially in the dementia care space, where living in the same household with that person becomes dangerous for the caregiver and therefore dangerous for the person they're trying to.
We're going to call this the hook, though, because what you're talking about is that we call it the decision. And what is it that decides when it's not safe or whether it's not good for everybody involved to stay at home?
And one of the reasons why I wanted to make this part 3 of our series is because, hey, the holidays are coming. And we are right in the middle of family get-togethers. And it looks different with people with dementia.
We got that.
And we also are seeing some very famous families walk through it, like Bruce Willis's family. I saw online after the interview that his wife gave to, I believe it was People magazine. She said she moved him to a separate home nearby. And there were so many people saying with all that money, she could have kept him in the home. People don't understand dementia care.
And they don't understand that he has frontal temporal dementia. And that was a really good solution. When I read that, and the children, and she goes up there they go up there every day and they have meals and things. It's almost a perfect solution. And I really love that. So we can get into that.
We're going to get in that because that step for many caregivers, allowing someone to come in or placing their loved one somewhere else, is probably the most important step of self-care in the entire process. And we are going to go in depth with Dr. Chuck Edwards from Memory and Movement Charlotte. So make sure you look for part 3 of Hope with Ramona Holloway.
This podcast was made possible by Memory and Movement Charlotte, a nonprofit practice providing comprehensive clinical and diagnostic expertise for individuals with cognitive and movement concerns. Find the Memory and Movement Charlotte website at mmclt.org and listen to Dr. Chuck Edwards' podcast, On Your Mind, at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere the finest podcasts are found.
Thanks for sharing hope with me. If you'd like to connect, go to RamonaHolloway.com. You can find me on my socials. Once again, Ramona Holloway. And if you'd like to support this podcast, guess what? RamonaHolloway.com.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.